Lucas van Valkenborch. Lucas van Valkenborch the Elder was a Flemish painter, mainly known for his landscapes. He also made contributions to portrait painting, and allegorical and market scenes. Court painter to Archduke Matthias, the governor of the Spanish Netherlands in Brussels. He later migrated to Austria and then Germany, where he joined members of his extended family of artists who had moved there for religious reasons. Life. Lucas van Valkenborch was born in Leuven in what would become one of the most prominent Flemish families of artists. Spanning 3 generations, 14 artists are recorded in the family, of whom his older brother Martin the Elder and the sons of the latter, Frederick van Valkenborch and Gilles van Valkenborch, were the most important personalities. On the 26th of August 1560 he is recorded as entering the Painters' Guild of Mechelen. Mechelen was known at the time as a centre for oil and watercolours and especially landscape painting. The artistic milieu of Mechelen was decisive on the development of the artist. Lucas van Valkenborch learned in Mechelen the art of watercolour painting. Here he also got to know the prominent painters Peter Bruegel the Elder and Hans Boll, who both played an important role in the development of landscape painting in the Low Countries. The 17th-century biographer Karel van Mander reported that Lucas van Valkenborch learned to paint landscapes in Mechelen. At the start of the iconoclastic fury of the Beeld and Storm in 1566, Lucas van Valkenborch left Antwerp with his brother Martin van Valkenborch, probably for religious reasons, as they may have been Protestant. A series of topographical views, including a 1567 painted view of Liège, prove that van Valkenborch travelled up the Meuse Valley. This trip played an important role in his development as a landscape artist working directly from nature. In 1570 the artist was in Aachen, where he met up again with his brother Martin. Here, the two brothers were also joined for 2 years by Hans Verdeman de Vries, friend and fellow artist. By 1575 Lucas had returned to Antwerp, where he must have made a name for himself. Before 1579 the young Archduke Matthias of Austria, the governor of the Spanish Netherlands, hired him as his court painter. The Archduke was particularly impressed by his skills as a portrait painter. As court painter, Valckenborch created in the Netherlands some works for the Archduke, including the designs for the Archduke's gardens, some portraits. After the Archduke lost his position as governor in 1582, the Archduke left the Netherlands and went to live in Linz without position. It is not clear when Lucas van Valkenborch joined the Archduke in Linz. Van Mander describes the pair travelling together down the Danube. There is no documentary evidence for this, but it is assumed that he arrived in Linz in 1582 or earlier and stayed there until June 1582 at least. 2 bills from Kremsmünster prove that he actually spent time in Upper Austria. At the beginning of 1593 Lucas van Valkenborch joined his brother Martin in Frankfurt am Main. Here he became the teacher and collaborator of Georg Flegel. He remained active in Frankfurt until his death in 1597. Work. General Lucas van Valkenborch is mainly known for his landscapes, which depict existing and imaginary scenes. He also painted portraits for his patron Emperor Matthias. He was further a figure painter, as is shown in a series of 9 allegories of the seasons painted in Frankfurt from 1592. Valckenborch's earliest dated works are from 1567. His monogram was LVV or LVV. Early in his career he placed the L below the 2 V's, while after 1570 he signed with the letters inverted. His style was close to that of Peter Bruegel the Elder, but he modified this influence in a personal manner and was not a slavish copyist. His work was rooted in the same Flemish tradition, without following the new Humanist movement. Landscapes. Van Valkenborch worked largely in the tradition of the so-called world landscape of panoramic vistas shown from a bird's-eye viewpoint. This style of landscape painting was developed in Antwerp in the first half of the 16th century by artists like Joachim Patinier, Henri de Bles and Peter Bruegel the Elder. It was also practiced by Lucas van Falckenburg's contemporaries such as Gilles Mostert and Gilles van Koningsloo. The Van Valkenborch also painted topographically accurate landscapes. Joris Honegel is believed to have used his topographical drawings, for instance the drawn view of Linz, for his designs for the 6-volume atlas, the Civitate Sorbis Terrarum, published by Georg Braun and Franz Hogenberg between 1572 and 1617. Lucas van Valkenborch based many of his imaginary landscapes on drawings he had made directly from nature during his travels. The drawings provided a repertory of motifs, which he employed on multiple occasions. His landscape compositions thus often combined real places with imaginary elements. It is therefore not possible to locate many of the views he created. For instance, none of the many landscapes with furnaces and forges has ever been identified. A large portion of his landscape output was dedicated to the depiction of rocky landscapes in which he situated ironworks as small religious or peasant scenes. Another recurring theme was that of rural entertainments, such as in the landscape with a rural festival are the two versions of the landscape with a peasant wedding and dance. He also created some close-up representations of forest landscapes, in the mixture of fantasy and accurate topographical details. The Van Valkenburg's landscape paintings offer a view of the world and man's relationship to it. This is particularly clear in his rocky landscapes in which the diminutive people on the winding path are reduced by the monumental cliffs. An example is the rocky landscape with travelers on a path where the distant goatherd and the silhouettes of his charges seem ant-like in comparison to the vast distance, and the vertiginous perspective of the scene. This dramatic visual depiction is clearly intended as a commentary on man's place within the universe. He also painted between 1584 and 1587 a series of large pictures depicting the labors of the months, probably on commission for Archduke Matthias. These compositions, of which 7 survive, present the various months of the year by showing the changing landscape and the traditional activities of humans during each month. It is not clear whether the 5 missing paintings were never painted or are lost. Due to the realistic setting, these compositions carry a documentary interest. The work of Peter Bruegel the Elder, who had painted a series of 6 on the times of the year, was influential on Van Valkenborch. Lucas van Valkenborch moved away from the tradition of painting the landscape in 3 cascading distances that were rendered in 3 different colors, brown, green and blue for each receding plane. Rather, he often left out the green tone for the middle distance. He also innovated the thematic scenes by developing them into genre scenes with a stronger narrative depth. He painted the mythical Tower of Babel 5 times. Portraits. Archduke Matthias is said to have engaged Lucas van Valkenborch as his court painter for his skills as a portrait painter. Many of the works he produced for the Archduke were in fact portraits, including portraits of the Archduke and his wife Sibylle von Jülich-Kleefberg. These portraits were full-length portraits, a bust format. He also painted several miniature portraits of the Archduke and his wife. It is clear that these portraits' role was to show the power of Archduke and to flatter his ego, as he is depicted invariably in a regal and imposing position and dressed in the latest fashions. Lucas van Valkenborch also included miniature portraits of himself and his friends in a number of his landscape paintings. This is the case, for instance, in the Emperor's painter's walk in the forest, where he has depicted himself on the left of the composition with his drawing tools. In the landscape with a rural festival, he included portraits of his friends Abraham Ortelius, Joris Honegel and himself among the throng of revelers. Market scenes. Lucas van Falckenburg painted a number of market scenes, which are also distinctively tied to the 4 seasons. The meat and fish market is an example of a market scene, which is also an allegory of winter. The work was likely part of a series of 4 dedicated to the seasons. The imagery of the market scenes can be traced back to the previous generation of painters from the Antwerp school. In the series, Van Valckenborch particularly developed the tradition of vard market scenes pioneered by Peter Ertzen and Wim Beukelare. He strived for a synthesis of still life with landscape and genre painting. The still lifes in many of the market scenes were the work of his assistant Georg Flegel, who may also have trained with him. A snow-covered fish market scene is another example of a market scene set in the winter. People are shown skating on the ice in the background. 2 muffled-up, well-to-do women are making the purchases, dressed in the typical Brabant style of around 1580 to 1600. The fishmonger is shown slicing off pieces of salmon, while his wife is taking smoked fish from a hook. The fishing utensils in the foreground are the work of Flegel, who was able to render the fine metal shine of the brass bucket and the grain of the wooden water bucket. Georg Flegel also painted the food and luxurious tableware in 2 paintings of Van Valckenborch depicting banquets. Gallery.